A's fans, it's Friday, August 1st, and we suck again! 42-66, the Sacramento Athletics record. It's been a very weird season. We were projected to win 79 games, but now we're on pace for fewer wins than that. We're last in the division by a good margin. We're not going to make the playoffs. And it's past the trade deadline. We're actually the worst team in the American League. I didn't even see that. Are we the worst team in the league? Yes. We are the worst team in the league at the trade deadline. Fun stuff. But anyways, you can see Connor Griffin at a 24-game hit streak, not active anymore. What did we do? There's a lot of young players on this roster and a lot of players you probably never heard of. Let's get into it. Worst offense in the American League, decent pitching staff. Pythagorean record, 44-64, so maybe a little bit better. And we do have some success stories. Number one, Joe Little. 2.84 ERA and 82 1/3 innings pitched, on track for 23 starts this season. His potential has actually gone up a lot, from 55 to 65 now, and the overall up to 60. So he's become the pitcher that we kind of thought he was going to be. I've seen it out of the park. I'm kind of learning it. I mean, this is my first sim on this game, and I started before the first patches. So I'm now learning what the development system is like. And it seems that prospects like to kind of bungee. They'll go down once they reach the high minors, and then sometimes they'll get to the bigs and they'll come back up to their previous level. Pat Bresser is not one of those guys. It's kind of a league average starter, which is fine. He was a second-round pick. That's a good outcome for a second-round pick as a league average starter. Wilkerman Gonzalez is getting very bad luck, 6.20 ERA. Jamie Maynard. Well, actually, I'll get into the trades in a whole separate thing. Joey Estes is right now in the closer role after the moves we've made. He's having a good year. Josh Range is up. He was our fifth-round pick in 2026. 10 1/3 innings, just kind of an average guy. Now he's starting. He is yet to start for us in the big leagues. Jaden Baptiste, a trade acquisition. I couldn't trade Brandon Hughes. Nobody really wanted him. He's getting some good BABIP luck. And we'll probably non-tender him at the end of the year at 35, going to be 36. But he's put together a good season for us so far. Hopefully that holds. Jeremy Bassnagel is a guy that we're just throwing up because, I don't know, Emerson Hancock's having an even better season with the Rockies. I don't know. It's a good season with the Rockies. Even with these ratings, I don't get it. But he's just doing it. They signed him to a medium-term deal, and this has been one of the worst trades for us. Chase Davis, fortunately, not tearing it up this season for the Blue Jays, not making us look even worse. So Bassnagel was the other guy we got in that trade, in addition to Hunter Brown. Hunter Brown, who's having a pretty decent season on a cheap contract, so another move we failed to make. He's on the Mets now. Before I forget, Tyler Soderstrom is awful this year. So it's that year-to-year variance that he has, where he has as many awful years as good years in the bigs. He was a player we needed to trade, even with those 2 seasons that ended up being pretty good for the Mets. Bassnagel, whatever, he's 26. One of the worst players we've called up in a long time, but that's because our depth in AAA of young, controllable relievers is down. We did add some guys, Cam Caminiti, Trey Combs. So we added 4 players via trade to the Major League roster. We'll get into it soon. Cole Mathis not having a good year. His leash is short. Carlos Rodriguez also not having a good year. Is he auto? No, he's arbitration. So we'll get into the guys we traded for in a little bit. On the hitting side, Jeremy Rodriguez is going to challenge for Rookie of the Year. He has at various points been the best player in the league. Has never fallen below an average bat in any month this season. Surprisingly, he's not a plus third baseman with these ratings. 70 arm. Maybe it's the 50 range, but I've seen guys with lower than that. I mean, maybe it's just variance. But he'd be an even more valuable player if he was playing plus defense. We got him in a minor league free agent signing, and he's our best player on the team. Connor Griffin, though, having a good year as well. Started off very slow once again this season, but picked it up quicker than he did last year, so that bodes well for him. Having an amazing month of July after a pretty good month of June. Dan Sant we traded for. Bobby Hunter's been out with injury for some parts of this season. A bit of an underwhelming year for him in a year where he kind of had the keys to do whatever he wanted to in his third year in the bigs. Chase DeLauder has been called up. A couple teams were asking about him, but we needed some lefty outfield help, and he was in the minor leagues hitting well. He's a free agent after the year. We just needed a body. Takung Su is up. Playing a fine shortstop. And I'll get into the injuries and why these guys are up in a minute. Tim McFarland, another guy who had the reins to do whatever he wanted to, and he's angry now about his role on the team. Like, you got to hit, buddy, and you'll get a better role. Braden Montgomery's another guy that needs to hit. He has not been as good this season as we thought he could be. BABIP is a problem. He's been consistently around 300, now down to 265, and he's already a low average kind of. Well, actually, he's not a low average guy in this MLB, but he's not a guy who walks all that often and strikes out a lot. So he's got to be hitting, and he's not hitting completely this year. Mike Millington, we got in a trade. Alfredo Duño is our righty catcher in the platoon. After a pretty decent year last year in his rookie year, he's taken a step back with some lower BABIP. We're getting bad luck and bad results from what we've done. Drew Jones, another guy that I just wish could hit as well as he does in AAA, man. I mean, come on. Back-to-back seasons of 170 OPS plus, and he can't even scratch out a league average season in the majors. We'll give him another shot. And then Ismael Ayala has come up. He's a third-round pick in 2027. Maybe you could have kept him down a bit longer. I might do that right now, honestly. He still needs a little bit more time. So is there anybody else down here that I can call up? Jeff Wagner's a guy that's taken a big leap as a prospect recently. He's probably only a second baseman, maybe just a first baseman, but we have a lot of these righty infielders. Zach LaValle up to AAA now. Our problem is Grady Emerson and LaValle just aren't ready for the bigs yet. Micah Brito was a guy we traded for. I don't know who I'd want to call up. We probably need another lefty bat, but I want an infielder. I'll call up Wagner. He's kind of ready to go. So Wagner's in, Millington benched. And then Jace Young, awful season from him. Another guy who is suffering from some bad BABIP luck. His career mark is close to 300. He's down at 271. That's why I haven't DFA'd him or traded him. He's just not getting lucky. And he's too cheap of a player to move on from that quickly after the season he had a year ago in his first full season in the major leagues. And not even a full season, but he was kind of a hybrid platoon player. So who do we move on from to add the players we added and get to this point? Gabriel Martinez has been DFA'd. He's had every chance to carve out a major league role, and he just has not taken it and seized it. He's 28, so I'm done with him. Now he's 29. Jacob Wilson, another 29-year-old. We cut him. You saw the amount of righty infielders that I have in AAA right now. He's with the Diamondbacks in AA. He did get a bit of work with the big league club this season. So parts of 4 big league years for Jacob Wilson as a former first-round pick. Not the worst outcome, but a pretty bad one. He wasn't our pick, though. So Jonathan Jordan is struggling. We traded Angel Zerpa for him, and Zerpa has been great in the majors, so not a great win there, a loss. Chris Broom is up in AAA. I'm excited about him. He's hit at every level so far that he's been at for more than 15 games. Chris Sinclair is now up in AAA. Ethan Villa had an extended opportunity in the bigs and didn't do much with it. Eric Salazzo in AAA, a 10th round pick. So we're finally getting our draft picks up to the high minors. And all these guys are basically after the real-life classes have cycled through. It's really hard in the real-life classes on the patch that I was on to get quality minor league prospects that stick. Ayala's here. Micah Brita was a guy. I'm going to go through the trades bit by bit, but Brita is a guy I edited him to be a better first baseman. Like, I don't think anyone that can play the outfield should have 20 infield range so that they just can't play first base at all. Like, make him at least a bad first baseman. He's just got a good bat, and I added him to a trade. Gio Ducre up in AAA. Mike McCall up in AAA. All these pitchers, I don't see a big future for any of them except Kim. And maybe, who's the other guy? No, not really anybody. Maybe Nasi. We just drafted him last year. Number prospect promotions in AA. I guess I can get into the draft class too. Yeah, so let's do trades in the draft class. Where are we at here? Do the draft first. So we had 3 first-round picks for Denzel Clark and Roansy Contreras. We got 2 supplemental first-round picks. You can see our draft history here. It's very poor. We didn't have a single major leaguer other than Cole Mathis actually was a major leaguer in 24. But nobody else, I think, made it to the high minors. Maybe AA for Josh Springer there. Some AA guys. But that's about it, which is kind of nuts. Or no, he made it to the American Association, not AA. Jack McKernan in AAA. Bolus, Brumbaugh. And I had 20 picks in each of these years, but the missing players are guys that have since retired and never made it to the majors. So I guess complete, whiff in 25, 1 major leaguer in 24, and then a few guys that'll probably, Josh Range is here from 26, Emerson will see the bigs. That's about it from here. Maybe Ducre. And then 27, Griffin, Brasseur, Ayala, 3 guys that have already seen the bigs, and a number of guys, Phil King, Cordy Alexander. But yeah, so here's 31. Jorge Ramirez was our first round pick. College bat, very talented shortstop, second baseman, third baseman, a little bit of outfield ability. Has had 3 years on the Cape and been good. Now he's with us in Stockton. And the bat potential in combination with the defense and the fact that he was already so far along was the enticing thing about Ramirez. And I should probably bump him up to high A given that he's already 21. Joel Paul was taken with our first supplemental draft pick. He's 17 years old, a lefty starter. I think that is good enough to warrant a pick in the 40s. Especially none of these guys wanted a large chunk of change, and he's got high work ethic. So one of the rare situations where I'll draft a starter these days after learning from my mistakes at the beginning of this sim with McKernan in the first round and Levi Sterling in the first round. Both, Sterling completely flamed out. McKernan's reached AAA, but I don't see him making the bigs. He's just kind of a warm body there. John Chilson, the number 89 prospect in baseball, another supplemental pitcher. We take with the second supplemental pick. He is a bit farther along, obviously, as a 21-year-old. He made a number of starts in high A and succeeded there. So he'll probably start. Well, actually, he's in AA right now. I just promoted him. Dan Coyne, our scout, wanted him. The 80 power potential was too good to pass up if he reaches his ceiling, so that was kind of just a fun player. Not like we'll be on this sim long enough to see him. Josh Walling, another college pitcher that's in high A. Luis Arroyo, a good shortstop prospect from college. I went heavy on the college players here, up until I didn't. Well, 17-year-old Jonathan Maxuga, already having 30s everywhere. The gap power worries you a little bit. He can kind of play third, but probably a first baseman. Pat Rigo. There's nobody else that was eye-catching, I would say, and we'll have to see how they do in the minors. Jim Caker, high schooler, bad in rookie ball. Chris Broom, though, and LaValle from last year are doing well. Nasi's up in AAA. Joe Little in the bigs. Mallard, a top prospect. Not going to call it. Don Baugh, is he hitting well? No. We've drafted better. Jeff Wagner reaches the major leagues. We've drafted better recently. Now let's get into these trades. And after this, I'll move on to the end of this season and possibly a bit of the offseason and then the opening day in 2032. And that's if I'm not fired. This is season 8. I think in real life I'd be fired, like almost immediately. I've had one playoff appearance, excuse me, in 8 years. Won't have one this year. The farm is not highly regarded by Out of the Park. The owner has been a bit more frustrated with me. I expanded our stadium because I thought we'd finally be getting more attendance after last season, but it's been nearly half empty. The budget has stayed the same for almost the entirety of the sim. Small bump of $4 million. We've made money every year, though, but one season at 500, one season slightly above, and then the 2 80 and 82 seasons. He's very, very angry about all these goals. We're not reaching the playoffs. Manuel Pena has been bad. We do not have a local popular player. Ji-Hoon Kim was a guy I purchased out of the indie leagues. He's like an 80 grade prospect, but he's 18. Fan interest has dropped. No international fines that have made the big leagues. It's not looking great. I fired the big league staff. Victor Silverio has been 17 and 26 in his games as manager. That was after Troy Barrick went 25 and 40, so a slightly better winning percentage. But I assigned all these guys to one-year deals or promoted them from the minor leagues, so they'll all be gone after the season. The minor leagues themselves, though, are faring well. Midland and Sacramento AAA have been like winning every single year. Playoffs since 2026 for our AAA team, 2 championships, and then for the AA team, Midland, a championship, 3 playoff appearances, and probably a third here. The best season actually they've ever had, on pace for at least. So the minors are looking good. Stockton's looked better than they ever have. Rookie ball not as good. Lansing has struggled throughout this whole sim, except for the past 2 seasons. So the minors are looking healthy, finally. Forgot to talk about the injuries. Manuel Pena has been out since the beginning of July with a fractured finger. He was not doing well anyways, so not that much of a loss. Mauricio Albaladejo came up for a bit, but immediately tore his UCL, so Sue came back up. Albaladejo, maybe the eye comes up, that's fun, and up to an 80 infield range. So now he's a 50 potential player. He's a good player at 25, so he'll be around. And then Max Clark strained his hamstring, and he'll be out for 3 months, which that was a big blow. He was a positive, really taking over defensively for Denzel Clark, maybe not with the bat. Clark having a good season, the kind of season to which we've grown accustomed with Houston. An average hitting year, and actually Clark's having a better defensive season than Clark with an E. But, for us, we can't afford to pay a guy $10 million to give us the production that a guy could give us on the minimum, or at least 2/3 of it. Nothing else other than that. All right, trades, finally. Did we make any trades in June? I don't think we did. In July, start from the bottom. Okay. Fan favorite Austin Charles is now a New York Yankee, and he is succeeding there. He was bad for us. He finally, the end of the line came, I think, after high seasons of BABIP and some overachievement defensively. He's been a bad second baseman, bad third baseman, and he's 27 out of options in arbitration. I was ready to move off of him. We had other players that could fit that role for cheaper. Jake Bennett came up for a bit for us and pitched well, but the prospect that we got is the reason that I included him, along with Gregory Barrios, who I just didn't really want on the 40-man roster anymore. He's out of options, and we have other players that can fit his role. We pick up Juan Carrera. They offered this trade to me for this player, 70 potential 17-year-old. That's fun. That's a good addition to make. If we were in this job for more than 5 years. And then Jamie Maynard, who will help us right now, 50 potential starting pitcher. I was happy to add him. He was having a very good year in his second year in the big leagues with New York. That was the first trade we made. The second trade we made, Yvonne Moran, who was on a very cheap deal for us, was awful. 7.50 ERA in 24 innings, was pitching in AAA. I decided to move off of him along with Aaron Bracco, who has also, I think, reached the end of his usefulness, although he's getting a good run in Miami right now. And we traded those two players for Juan Bello, in addition to Juan Bello, for Trey Combs, who I think is a talented lefty flamethrower. 94, 96, 75 grade stuff potential. He's only had an inning and 2/3 with us, but he's been a fast riser over the past 2 years. And Mike Millington, who can play a good second base, although he's a righty. We need some lefty infielders. I did not add one at the deadline, so we're waiting for Pena to come back. But Millington, a spark plug, made his major league debut with us. Traded Kyle Bernovich, who was on a minor league deal, and Johan Oviedo for Cam Caminiti, who was being dangled in numerous offers from the Phillies, and I thought he was an interesting enough player. He's a real-life player. Is seen as, I think, maybe he's more of a pitcher now, but I always considered him to be a position player. Drafted in the second round in 2025, finally, after a long climb, made it to the majors after a trade. Rule 5 draft pick. Yeah, that's right. He's a Rule 5 guy. So I have to have him on the roster, which is fine. We're the worst team in the league. Oviedo is pitching okay for us, but he's on the minimum, and I don't care. I'll pick up a player under team control. Around this time, we picked up Chase DeLauder, or added him to the roster, and then made a few more trades the next day. Cody Funderburk, 34 years old, heads to the Mets. In addition to Nick Frasso, who's now 32. Both these guys had been with us for a long time, but never reached the heights that we thought they could. We traded them for Mike Abrita and Davison Gutierrez, who is now our third catcher. Full slate of options. One was used this year. Good defensively, and maybe Duno, if Duno can't get it together, we could see Gutierrez at the end of the year. TJ Brock, our closer, who was not having a good season, and Yuri Perez, a starter who was not having a good season, have been traded to the Houston Astros for Dan Sant, a guy who had 104 plate appearances for Houston and hit well in them. They offered to give him up. 65 power potential, 60 I. He's going to strike out a lot, and he can only play first base. Actually, he can play some outfield, though. But right now he's at first for those two guys, and we also picked up Jaden Baptiste, who is in our Major League bullpen. So we're just shuffling in the young guys right now. And then the last two trades we made were on the deadline themselves. Juan Pacheco, who was our one of our minor league signings, used to be a top 50 prospect in baseball, had since fallen off, was doing well in the California League, but the contact potential and the avoid K's potential, I think, are something to worry about. So we move on from Pacheco and pick up Vicente Peralta after adding Valentin Linares. We don't retain any of his salary. The Blue Jays just wanted him. I don't know. It was a weird trade, but Peralta, I think, is a very talented young player that we pick up. And then finally, the most valuable player we've acquired in this sim, Jesus Gurindo, has been traded to the Cleveland Guardians after another good season with us. He's just been an average starter for the past 7 years. Finally move on for him for Kevin Bacalar, a right-handed pitcher with years of team control. So, those are the moves we made. Were awful. I don't know how to, we might have to retire at the end of this sim. We have guys that are going to be able to come up, I think, but none of them are game changers. They're all average or slightly above average major league players. Some guys in the low minors, but they're not going to pan out to where you'd expect them to be. But we'll see. I don't know. This team, I think, is pretty good. I don't think it's that much worse than a year ago when we were supposed to win 95 games. But it's a youth movement. That's what you got to do. You got to swallow your lumps for a few years with the A's when you reach the pinnacle of a period of time with a certain number of players under team control. So now we'll have to move on, and I'll see you at the end of the year. Bye-bye.